Scripture very clearly says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. We become wise the day we learn to fear God. Now, hang on to that. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and yet when you read Scripture, you will see that virtually, you can almost say every time, virtually every time that God appears in Scripture, in what we call a theophany. See, a theophany is where God appears. In virtually every case, you know the first words. The first words are, do not be afraid. So the way God enters your life in Scripture are always with the words, do not be afraid. If something frightens you, you can be sure it's not God's voice.
Well, the title I chose is Fear and Her Many Children, and I want to talk about religious fear. And the reason I want to talk about it is because I'm convinced that it's one of the most important things that we should be dealing with and aren't dealing with. I'm concerned that today in our churches, not just the Catholic Church, but in our churches and even in our politics, so much is being driven by fear that's unconscious, that's not healthy. One of the things I want to quote Marilyn Robinson. She says, what's happened inside of our churches, to put that at a more sophisticated level, said we have unconsciously inhaled the very bias of the Enlightenment against Christianity. That they just felt that Christianity will not stand up to strong intellectual scrutiny and rigorous intellectuality. And you know what's happened? The churches have believed it, so we're afraid of scientists and we're afraid of things as if and we protect God like a pious novice, that God somehow has to be protected, that God can't stand up to intellectuals in our universities and so on, and our scientists. So we've, in fact, noticed that's fear, but it's based on a bad image of God.
Religious fear, as I say on the sheet, is an extremely complex mixture of health and pathology. All of us in this room, whether we admit it or not, if you're not a psychopath, you have a lot of fear. And that fear will invariably be a mixture of health and pathology. Part of it will be good, and part of it will be bad.
What's, in one word or one line, what's the source of unhealthy fear? Again, a wrong concept of God. Somehow a God who doesn't get it, a God who isn't compassionate, a God who isn't that bright, a God who's very legalistic, and and the healthy fear is grounded on God's very magnitude and in God's goodness.
Oftentimes we hear it expressed in two different caricature expressions that you hear. The one of them is that the expression of what I call the recovering Catholic or the recovering Christian, because Catholics claim they do this the best, but Presbyterians say they do it better, and the Jews say they do it better, and so on. And that is the person who feels that their inhibitions, their fears, that these were put to them by their religion. You're familiar with it. Maybe you've been on the couch, the recovering Catholic.
I think where Maryknoll does great work is it stretches people to open their hearts and minds to the stranger, to what's foreign, and that's where revelation comes. Revelation in Scripture comes through the foreigner, through the outsider, and see Maryknoll, Orbis Press, comes through the poor, and so on. Its very ethos is don't be afraid of what's foreign, what's different. Don't be afraid of the poor. Don't be afraid of God. And so I've been a great admirer of Maryknoll, and I really think that they have tried to, like I said, when you asked, how do you address this? You address fear by having a healthier concept of God and a healthier concept of church. And I think Maryknoll has always had a concept of God and church that has stretched people. Quite simply, I would hope that an audience walks away from here, that if, say, you were in the audience, you'd walk away a little more free inside. Just a little more free to, first of all, to live life, not to live it irresponsibly, but to live life knowing you're under this incredible parent, who is completely understanding, who's is really the most trustworthy person, and that you'd never, put it in a deeper way, that the person walking away isn't going to run away from God when they need God most.
My first time to come here at Maryknoll, and I really enjoyed the talk with Father Rolheiser, and it's very enlightening for me, and I wish I'd like to listen to him again.
A tremendous talk, one that gives me hope, gives me the opportunity to go more deeply into God and into His mercy, into His love. A very needed message for today.